Welcome to the Mentup Lead Up podcast, an essential resource for all small business leaders and their CMAGs, consultants, mentors, advisors and coaches. Listen in to what our experts have to say and gain from their tips and ideas. I'm Michelle Estes, founder and CEO of the Mentup Lead Up technique and author of published book In Business With Yourself. You're very welcome to the podcast today. I'm joined by Jane Bayler. And Jane is a brand and online marketeer, consultant and trainer with a high level of background in global media and entertainment. After beginning her career as an art director in theatre, film and television, she transitioned to big agency life and ran campaigns for world-leading brands such as British Airways, Coca-Cola and ITV, amongst others. Jane, you're very welcome to the podcast.
It's wonderful to be here, Michelle. Thank you so much for inviting me.
And it's great to have you here. I want to start with summing up what I think your key messages are. It seems to be that a lot of what you're working on is around the art of effective communication. And I'm going to start with your book, The Smart Connector. Really, in the book, you're teaching us all to become expert marketeers. And then in that, you discuss the power of authentic connection. And you talk about your own journey bringing you to the power of authentic connection. And in your own words, you talk about, reaching rock bottom. Jane, what's that all about? Tell me a bit more.
Yeah, well, that's a very personal journey, really. And obviously, for me, personal is also business. So I reached a point in my life where things, let's just say everything came to a head at the same time, which I know happens to a lot of people. But I realized with great force at that particular time, I was in the middle of a divorce and I'd also had some very difficult dealings with people in business. And I embarked on a journey of personal growth and development. And I eventually came to realize with great force that I had really started out on this journey of life with faulty wiring. And the faulty wiring was, I suppose you could say, no fault of my own because of the family that I was brought up in. But I was very much encouraged to believe that we stand or fall by our own efforts. Our family was troubled. And I think that I went out in the world thinking, anything that I achieve in life, I have to do it for myself, which on the one hand gives you, I suppose, a real drive, because if you think, well, nobody else is going to do it for me, then obviously, you probably speak to a lot of ambitious people and they would say the same thing. But what I really underestimated, and this is the thing that I realized with great force, is that no man is an island. We are all connected and we are stronger together when we surround ourselves with people who will lift us higher as opposed to bring us down. And I think not actually prioritizing the right people, the right relationships, and the right connection was the thing that had really caused the biggest problems and issues in my life. So that's really where the genesis of the book came from. And it is a very, very strong belief that I have today, is that connection is a superpower. It's my superpower. And I want to be able to share that with the world and make everybody connect smartly.
I mean, there's some really powerful messages in there, I think, Jane. And, you're quite right. We all get to where we are because of many of our personal experiences. And I talk about sometimes the scars on our backs and what those do to bring us to the point that we can work with others, help others, support others. But I was amazed by and intrigued by, you talk about getting to know someone for 6 months before you actually engage at any particular deep level. And I thought that was really a really good tip. So, in our podcast here, we're looking at not just the small business owners and leaders, but we're also thinking about the people who advise them. So as advisors and mentors and coaches, maybe there's something in there about for that audience as well.
Well, yes, definitely, because I think in general, what's happening in our world today is that technology is speeding everything up. And I think what we do have to remember is that our fundamental human nature doesn't change. We are we have a psychological makeup that goes back centuries. And I think when you think, okay, everything is faster these days, everything is more instant, attention spans are shorter, look, all of that is true, but you can't fast track connection. You really can't. It is not impacted by technology. I suppose in a way, technology has meant that we can connect in a different way, perhaps in a more superficial way, a faster way, all of those kind of things. But if you're talking about genuine, deep connection, then it is something that evolves naturally between human beings as a result of consistent exposure over time. And that is never going to change, no matter what is happening in the world of AI, online marketing, all the other stuff that I'm involved in. People and relationships are the drivers of success in business. And we just have to remember that there are certain psychological truths that underpin human relationships and also business success, because business success is about people. So that's really what that's all about, Michelle.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because I was having this conversation just a couple of days ago, and we were talking about, and particularly in, soulpreneurs and perhaps people who are, working on their own a lot, and we were talking about networking and how important networking actually is, and that sometimes business leaders see it almost as an addition, an add-on. Clearly, we could all say, well, look, there's a way to be positive in your networking. There's a way to make your networking work for you. But outside of that theme, those relationships and really important, particularly for small business leaders, to get out there and develop those relationships.
Well, I think that's really true. Your network is your net worth is obviously a very famous saying. And I think a network is different from networking, although both are important. And I think building your network is very much a strategic exercise. And I think we have to think about, okay, what kind of people do we really want in our lives? And in our businesses, and that is both from a point of view of what they can bring to the table, how they can enhance our offers and our businesses, and what they have that we don't have that makes us really stronger together and compatible as a team or as partners. But I also think it's about, do we share the same values? And not everybody does. And I think it's very easy to assume that everybody is like us, and they're not. Is the truth. And the reason why, just to go back to your earlier point about getting to know people over a period of time, the reason why this is important is because over time is really when the mask drops, if you like, and you actually get to see people for who they really are. And that's not to say that you shouldn't trust people. I think you should go into every single relationship with an open heart and with trust and with a spirit of possibility. But I do think we have to also guard our hearts and guard our time, really, and make sure that we are not investing too much of our emotional energy or our time with people who are wrong for us. I think that's really important.
In that note around alignment of values, particularly in things like partnerships and business, the importance of that alignment with values, and also in terms of teams and employees, and how crucial that really is for a synergy in the business. I also talk about the alignment of identity in terms of leadership. Again, I think that that's really, really important. One of the things I want to explore a little bit more also, Jane, if you don't mind, is, you obviously
had a lot of success with in the larger corporate world. What messages would you bring from that experience to your work with small businesses? How do you align those two? How do you make that experience relevant to the small business sector? And it's a question sometimes I get asked.
Mm. Well, I think the media and entertainment world is a very entrepreneurial world. So I don't really think of myself as coming from a classic corporate background, because really, I think if to be successful in media and entertainment and advertising and so on, you have to sell yourself all the time. So it very much feels like entrepreneurship, and in fact, you're always kind of pretty close to the edge in terms of, am I going to survive in this environment, and what do I have to do? What value do I have to bring to the table? What sales do I have to make? What money do I have to generate? What do I bring all the time is very much, the message. So obviously, I was serving, certainly in my capacity as managing director of a big global agency, and actually working in advertising agencies on big global accounts. Obviously, I was working with big global businesses. And I think really at the end of the day, everybody, as I said, they're all the same under the surface. We're all people. We all have the same basic psychology. And the first thing that we need to feel is trust. So I think whether you're working in a small business, big corporate, whether you're transitioning from a corporate to a small business, or whether you're working in a very entrepreneurial sector like the one that I worked in, um, very, very fast paced. I think the most important thing to remember is that trust makes the world go round. And so, where there is trust, there is usually business success. Where there is a lack of trust, and where people are acting up because of that, it's usually because they're scared. And this cuts across the board. And if they're scared, nobody is going to be producing great results. They're just going to be serving themselves really and trying to cover their own backs. And I think anybody that's been in business for a while knows that that's the way it goes, right?
Yeah, it's separating that out, isn't it? Because in the business sector, particularly the small business sector, quite often the people who are leading those businesses, and they feel that they're continually in a competitive environment, and they are, you know, and then it's trying to sieve out of that where you lay that trust, and where the trust is not to be found. And I think sometimes separating that out can be a bit difficult, a bit complicated. Would you agree or not?
Yes. Well, as I said, I think when we are leaders of small businesses, and I know that's something that you're very passionate about as well, Michelle, we often have to build teams outside of our businesses, because we there are a range of skills that we will need to bring into our small business in order to make them successful. Some of those skills, they will have to be outsourced. Some of them we can get through building partnerships, obviously. Some of those we will get through hiring people, but usually it's a combination of all of those things. And really, to make sure that we don't have problems, because we don't have HR departments, we don't have large budgets for legal teams and all of those things that maybe big corporates have. We really do have to be quite smart and quite wise about how we bring those people into our businesses, and really think quite strategically but also emotionally about it. And when I say emotionally, I mean actually kind of use our intuition, our emotional intelligence, the knowledge and wisdom that we've actually built up over time, to recognize whether those people are going to be good for us or are going to cause us problems. Because what else do we have?
Absolutely. And I mean, quite often people talk about their gut reaction, don't they? I mean, what your gut says, we don't always need to go by that, but I suppose there's an element of that sometimes in our relationships as well, isn't there? I mean, we were talking earlier about experiences that we have through life that bring us to a certain point. And some of those experiences give us almost like a sixth sense, don't they, in terms of perhaps relationships and where we lay that trust and where we don't. Jane, if I may, before we finish up, I'd like to talk a little bit about, yeah, you talk about the waterfall method, and I'm intrigued by this, and I think it's something that our listeners would be really interested in. You talk about it moves us from relying on a single piece of communication to a position that creates a series of powerful linked communications delivered in multiple forms over time to get our message across. And given the massive use of social media and different platforms and all the different options that we have now to communicate, I think it's very relevant. Tell us a little bit more.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Well, I'm all about systems. I think as a marketer, we rely on systems, and systems are not necessarily just technology driven. So, the messaging waterfall is my proprietary messaging system specifically for people who sell their own services, although actually it can be applied to any business because really we all have to, in today's interconnected world, we all have to be able to communicate the value of what we do in a very fast but also quite sticky way so that people get it straight away and they say, do you know what, i haven't heard I haven't heard this before. This sounds really interesting and really different and something that I really need. And that's the response that we want people to have when we are talking about our services, if we're selling services. But most people don't know how to do that. And the truth is, this doesn't come naturally. It's not an intuitive exercise. You can't do it very well on apps like ChatGPT. They're actually quite poor at this stuff. So I just have a system and a methodology, and a lot of my clients use it. And it is so beautiful to see how they start talking about themselves once they've actually applied that methodology to their own business. And all of a sudden, their offer really jumps off the page. It comes to light, it really shines, and you can really see how it works because people suddenly understand, okay, I get this now, I get it. And so it's all about stimulating that response. Bypassing the curiosity filter is something that a phrase that I sometimes use, but it means just really getting people to yes much, much faster because they totally get the value of what you do. And that's what the messaging waterfall is for.
Fantastic. I think there's some valuable tips for us all in there. Jane, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast, and it's been great. And I think you've got a world of experience. I'm sure our listeners have benefited from that today. So thank you very much for joining me. It's been fantastic.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure, Michelle. It's been great to talk to you today, and thank you very much for bringing me on the show.
Thank you.
That's it for this month. Thanks for listening in to Mint Up Lead Up, the podcast for all small business leaders and their CMACs, consultants, mentors, advisors, and coaches.